Imagine being locked away on an alien world where cruelty is entertainment and survival is a joke. Now imagine the guards choosing the wrong human to torment. What would you do if the deadliest predator in the galaxy answered your screams? Stick around because this story might just change how you see humanity. Before we begin, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you never miss the next tale of defiance among the stars. The fortress prison of Krail was not built for rehabilitation. It was a monument to dominance, a place where alien guards strutted in armor lacquered with the blood of captives. The Draxan believed pain was currency and suffering proof of order. On this barren world, where black winds scoured rock and sky, humans were not prisoners, they were toys. Captain Elias Ward learned that truth in the first hour of his captivity. The shackles they had fitted him with were not meant to restrain strength, but to remind him of his helplessness. The Draxan were tall and reptilian, with jagged ridges of bone across their skulls, and they delighted in showing him how easily they could break a man's ribs with a casual flick of a clawed hand. He had endured much already, but nothing tore at him more than what they did to her. Mira had been a nurse on the frontier, patching up wounded soldiers in a canvas tent as orbital strikes lit the sky. She had soft eyes, a stubborn streak, and a way of speaking that could quiet even men in agony. She was no soldier, no fighter, just a healer. When the Draxan took her, Elias knew it wasn't for information. They wanted to hear how a human broke. He remembered the first night in the cell block, her voice echoing down the stone corridor, trembling but steady. "You're not going to win," she told them as they circled her. Elias shouted from his cage until his throat shredded raw, but the guards only laughed and pressed her against the cold wall. They wanted him to listen. That was the game. Every day since had been the same ritual. They dragged her away, and when she returned she was more bruised, more bloodied, yet still whispering encouragement through swollen lips. Elias wanted to believe he was strong enough to endure his own pain. But enduring hers? That was different. Tonight, as the crimson lamps buzzed low above the cells, the Draxan came for her again. Their leader, a hulking brute with scars burned into his scales, sneered at Elias as they unlocked her door. "The healer squeals sweetest," he growled, shoving her forward. "Your turn will come when she finally begs." Elias lunged against the bars, the iron biting into his palms. "Touch her again and you'll wish you hadn't." His voice was hoarse but the words carried. The guards burst into mocking laughter. "The little medic still threatens," one hissed. "You have no weapons. No army. Only chains." Mira was dragged down the corridor, her eyes catching Elias's through the shadows. He saw her lips move, "Stay alive." Then she was gone, swallowed by the fortress. Silence weighed on the block, broken only by the hum of alien lamps and the rustle of scales as guards paced. Elias sank against the wall, blood trickling from cracked knuckles where he'd struck the bars. He wanted to close his eyes, to drift into the numb void of exhaustion, but then he heard it, distant, muffled, yet unmistakable. Her scream. The sound carved through him sharper than any blade. He staggered to his feet, slamming his fists against the door. "Stop. Leave her alone." His roar reverberated down the stone halls, but the guards only chuckled. They liked when the human broke. They liked the echo of despair. But something was different tonight. When the scream faded, he caught murmurs in the guard's hissing tongue. One tilted his head, spines rattling uneasily. "Do you hear it?" Another sneered. "The abyss stirs." The words meant little to Elias, but the tone did. For the first time he heard unease in their voices. They glanced toward the far end of the cell block, where a gate of iron thicker than starship hull plating sealed a shaft plunging into blackness. Chains clinked in the depths. Elias narrowed his eyes, every instinct of a soldier sharpening. They feared something down there. Something caged. One of the younger guards snorted, forcing bravado into his voice. "It cannot escape. The beast is chained. It only hungers for screams." Another corrected him, a rumble of unease in his chest. Not just any screams. Human screams. Elias pressed his forehead to the bars, ignoring the blood on his lips, the ache in his bones. He didn't understand yet, but he could feel it. Some force stirred in the dark, responding to Myra's pain. Something old. Something savage. The lead guard noticed his stare and stomped closer, slamming a clawed fist against the bars. "Do not hope, human. That abyss holds no savior. Only death. And if your healer's cries awaken it fully, we will feed you to it first." Elias met the alien's gaze without flinching. He had lived too long with blood and fire to be cowed now. "Then I'll make you a promise," he rasped. "If she dies, you won't outlast me long enough to see sunrise." The guard snarled, but beneath his reptilian sneer, Elias caught it, the flicker of doubt. Even monsters feared something. Hours passed, each minute stretched taut with the echo of distant cries and the restless rattle of chains from below. Elias's body begged for rest, but his mind clung to the rhythm of a soldier's discipline. He counted heartbeats. He mapped guard patrols. He whispered Myra's name under his breath like a vow. Then another scream tore through the fortress, louder, sharper. And this time the answer came. A roar, so deep it shook dust from the ceiling stones, erupted from the abyss. Chains snapped taut, iron grinding against stone. The guards froze mid-step, color draining from their scales. One muttered, "It listens. It remembers." Elias gripped the bars, pulse hammering. He didn't know what beast they had locked beneath the prison, didn't know why it stirred at the sound of Myra's pain. But he knew one thing with certainty. Whatever it was not on the Draxon's side. The fortress trembled again, another roar rolling through the abyss. Guards shouted orders, scrambling to tighten wards and reinforce locks. Elias bared his teeth in a bloodied smile. For the first time since his capture, he felt the faint spark of hope. Myra's screams had reached more than him. They had woken something else. And the Draxon had no idea what kind of storm they had invited. The Draxon guards dragged Elias from his cell before dawn. Their claws clinked against the chains binding his wrists as though savoring the sound of metal on bone. He staggered in the harsh pull of their grip, every muscle taut with exhaustion, but he forced his steps to remain steady. He would not let them see weakness. The corridor stank of old blood and scorched stone, the air heavy with the whispers of prisoners who no longer had voices to cry out. They led him not toward the chamber where Myra's screams had echoed the night before, but down a spiral staircase slick with condensation, deeper than he had ever been taken. He caught the nervous flick of the guards' eyes toward the shadows, the way even their armored tails twitched when another distant roar thundered from below. It was not for him they were afraid. It was for what lay ahead. At the base of the stair waited an iron gate taller than any war machine Elias had seen, layered in glyphs and crackling with static. A stench like burned ozone seeped through, mixing with the musk of predator musk so thick it stung the back of his throat. Beyond the bars, the darkness was alive. Chains rattled, each clink resonating through the stone as if the beast was breathing with the fortress itself. The warden stood waiting, his massive frame draped in scaled armor lined with bones of species Elias could not name. His eyes gleamed with cruel delight. "You humans scream well," the warden said, his guttural voice echoing. "But tonight I gift you silence. Tonight you die in the abyss." The guards shoved Elias forward, and for a moment he dug in his heels, not from fear but from recognition. That musk, that rumble in the darkness, it stirred something buried in his memory. Years ago, on a battlefield lit by tracer fire, he had knelt beside a dying comrade. They'd been surrounded, alien soldiers closing in, when a shape far larger than any tank had torn through the lines. He had expected death, but instead, the beast had paused in the smoke, its amber eyes locked onto him. It had not struck. It had simply watched as he dragged his comrade into cover, as if measuring his resolve, then vanished back into the night. He had thought the encounter a fever dream born of blood loss. Yet now, as the iron gate groaned open, he knew it had been real. The same musk, the same rumbling growl, the predator from that battlefield was here. And it remembered. The guards hurled him through the threshold. He hit the ground hard, grit scraping his face, the chains on his wrists rattling as he rolled across jagged stone. The gate slammed shut behind him with a clang that reverberated through the cavern. Above, Draxon soldiers leaned over the railing, their laughter echoing down. They expected spectacle, a feast of blood. From the abyss, eyes opened. Two molten orbs cut through the dark, hovering low to the ground. A growl rolled across the chamber like thunder, reverberating in Elias's chest. Slowly, the beast emerged into the crimson glow of the runelit walls. It was massive, a creature born of nightmare and battlefield legend. Obsidian fur rippled across muscles corded with raw power, claws longer than blades carving sparks into stone. Its head was lupin yet sharper, predatory, every tooth glistening in the torchlight. Chains wrapped its torso, each link as thick as Elias's forearm, anchored deep into the rock. The beast tested them with a lunge, the ground trembling beneath its weight. The Draxon jeered from above. "Flesh Reaper. Feed." The predator's gaze locked onto Elias. Its nostrils flared. Its growl shifted, no longer the blind hunger of a caged monster, but something more focused, more deliberate. The amber eyes narrowed, recognition dawning like fire. Elias rose slowly to his feet, every instinct screaming to run, but he did not move. Instead, he met its gaze, chest heaving, refusing to look away. Memories of that battlefield surged. The smoke, the fire, the moment their eyes had met before. He whispered, voice ragged but steady. "It's you." The predator tilted its massive head, a low rumble vibrating through the cavern. Chains clinked as it took one deliberate step closer. The guards above leaned forward, confused by the hesitation. This was not the frenzied assault they anticipated. Another scream cut through the air. Myra's. Distant, muffled, but sharp enough to pierce stone. Elias's fists clenched. The predator stiffened, ears flicking toward the sound, hackles rising. Its gaze swung from Elias to the ceiling, then back, and for an instant, something passed between them. Not words, not thought, but recognition of a shared cause. Elias raised his chained hands, showing the iron cuffs, the scars on his wrists. "They hurt her," he growled. "Help me." The predator lunged, but not at him. It slammed against the wall, chains groaning as stone fractured beneath the strain. Sparks showered from runelocks as claws tore at the anchors. Guards shouted in alarm, their laughter gone, replaced by fear. The warden bellowed orders, but already cracks spread through the floor. Elias backed toward the far wall, heart pounding, as the predator ripped free one anchor, then another. Its roar shook the entire cavern, silencing every voice in the block above. The last chain snapped with a sound like thunder. The beast stood unbound, shoulders rolling, fur bristling, eyes burning brighter than ever. It turned toward Elias. For one terrible moment, the guards believed it would strike him down. Instead, the predator lowered its massive head, amber eyes fixed on him with a grim patience. The air between them seemed to hum with recognition. Above, Draxon curses rained down. "No. Kill the human. Tear him apart." The predator ignored them. Elias took a step forward, his chains rattling, and the beast did not move. He took another until he stood within arm's reach. Slowly, trembling, he pressed a hand against the obsidian fur bristling along its shoulder. Heat pulsed beneath the hide, raw muscle vibrating with caged fury. The predator growled low, not in threat but in answer. The Draxon began to panic, shouting for weapons, scrambling for reinforcements. The warden's voice bellowed above all, "Contain it. Do not let them bond." Elias turned his gaze upward, bloodied lips curling into a smile. Bond. That was the word they feared. They knew what this meant. Another of Myra's screams echoed from the distant halls, sharper, weaker. Elias clenched his fist in the predator's fur. "She needs us," he whispered. The predator threw back its head and roared, the sound so violent it cracked the runes along the walls. Stones split, torches guttered, and the fortress trembled. The guards recoiled in terror. This was no caged beast anymore. This was a storm unchained. Elias leaned close to the predator's ear, his voice a rasp of iron. "Then let's hunt." The beast surged forward, slamming into the gate with all the fury of a war god. Iron screamed, bolts snapped, the barrier shattering outward in an explosion of stone and dust. Alarms wailed as Draxon soldiers stumbled back, their weapons rising too late. Elias clung to the predator's side as it launched into the halls, claws tearing gouges in the floor, eyes blazing with purpose. Behind them, the abyss collapsed in ruin, and the fortress knew fear for the first time in its existence. Elias clung to the predator's fur as it thundered through the fortress corridors, every stride shaking dust from the ceiling. Draxon guards scrambled to form ranks, their reptilian faces twisting between rage and fear, weapons glowing with lethal charge. The beast did not slow. Its claws carved deep gouges into stone, and when the first volley of plasma bolts cracked against its hide, the predator only roared louder, as if daring them to fire again. The charge shattered the line. Draxon soldiers were hurled into walls like broken dolls, armor splintering under the weight of muscle and fury. Elias swung his chained fist into the nearest guard, the impact snapping scales and bone. He wrenched a rifle free, firing point blank into another, then ducked as the predator's tail whipped overhead and reduced a third alien to a smear across the floor. Their eyes met in the chaos, man and beast. Elias's chest burned with exertion, but he recognized the rhythm building between them. Each movement complemented the other, as though the battlefield bond had never been severed. He barked short commands out of instinct, the clipped orders of a soldier: "Left. Push." The predator responded, pivoting with uncanny precision, crushing enemies where Elias pointed, tearing through walls when he demanded a path. Blood sprayed across the stones. Smoke choked the hallways. Yet Elias's focus never faltered from the single thought that burned hotter than vengeance. Mira was still alive. She had to be. The predator halted suddenly at a junction, ears pricked, nostrils flaring. Elias steadied himself against its shoulder, straining to hear. There, a faint echo, not a scream this time but a cough, ragged and desperate. Mira. Take me to her, Elias whispered. The predator surged forward, scent guiding it through twisting passages, leaping over barricades and snapping chains that barred the way. Elias fought alongside it, his body screaming with fatigue, but every clash drove him harder. He remembered Mira tending to soldiers long after her hands trembled from exhaustion, refusing to abandon even the lost causes. He owed her the same refusal. Another squad of guards closed in, bristling with heavy cannons. The warden himself appeared among them, towering and snarling, his armor gleaming with blood-washed bone. He raised his clawed hand. Kill them both. Burn the healer's cries into ashes. The predator growled, lips peeling back over fangs. Elias slid from its flank, rifle ready. You'll have to try harder, he spat. The hall erupted in violence. Plasma fire streaked through the air, searing walls and melting stone. Elias dove forward, rolling beneath the barrage, firing 3 clean bursts into alien chests. The predator hurled itself into their midst, claws slicing through armored torsos, jaws snapping down on a guard's head with a sickening crack. The warden charged, slamming a spiked fist into the predator's side, forcing a roar of pain. Elias saw his chance. He sprinted low, swinging his chain-bound wrists upward. The cuffs cracked into the warden's jaw, staggering him. With a grunt, Elias tore a blade from the alien's belt and drove it between plated ribs. The warden snarled and backhanded him across the corridor, the impact nearly shattering bone. He gasped against the floor, blood filling his mouth. The warden loomed, blade raised high to finish him. Then the predator struck, crashing into the Draxon with such force that the floor split. It pinned the warden beneath its bulk, claws digging through armor, jaws closing over the alien's throat. The warden's roar turned into a gurgle, then silence. Breath ragged, Elias pulled himself to his feet. The predator lifted its blood-slick muzzle, amber eyes locking onto his again. The beast stepped aside, letting the warden's corpse slump to the ground at Elias's feet, as though offering the kill to him. Elias planted his boot on the alien's chest and ripped the blade free, chest heaving. Good, he muttered, nodding to the predator. Now let's finish this. Together they pressed on. The fortress groaned around them, alarms shrieking, fire spreading through shattered halls. Every step was a battle, yet the predator's roars and Elias's relentless strikes carved a path none could hold. The Draxon had built their prison as a monument to dominance, but tonight it crumbled under the will of a human soldier and the beast they thought untamable. At last they reached a chamber reeking of copper and smoke. Elias stumbled through the archway, heart stuttering at the sight. Mira lay chained to a steel frame, her body battered, her breath shallow but steady. Her eyes fluttered open, and when she saw him, tears streaked through blood on her cheeks. Elias, her voice was a rasp, fragile as glass. He rushed to her side, cutting through shackles with the stolen blade. I've got you. You're not alone anymore. Her weight sagged into his arms, weaker than he wanted to admit. Behind him, the predator lowered itself to the floor, crouching so Elias could ease Mira onto its back. She stirred faintly, her hand brushing through the thick fur. Instead of fear, her face softened, as though she somehow understood what this creature was, what it meant to Elias. The moment of reunion was short-lived. The walls shuddered as reinforcements stormed the corridors, their boots striking in unison. Dozens of voices shouted orders, the fortress bracing for its final stand. Elias slung the rifle over his shoulder, shifting Mira carefully against the predator's flank. His eyes burned with exhaustion, fury, and resolve. They're coming, he said quietly. All of them. The predator's ears flattened, its growl rising, claws scraping sparks from the floor. Elias wiped blood from his brow, lifted the alien blade, and drew in one sharp breath. He knew the odds. He knew the cost. But as long as Mira lived, surrender was not a word he would speak. He looked up at the approaching glow of enemy torches, the rumble of boots filling the corridors. Let them come, he said, voice steel. We'll show them what a human and a predator can do. The predator answered with a roar so powerful it silenced every voice in the fortress for a heartbeat, a roar that promised carnage. Mira pressed her forehead weakly to Elias's shoulder, whispering words only he could hear, "Don't stop." Elias tightened his grip on the blade, heart thundering with a fire he thought long extinguished. The fortress had mocked humanity. The guards had broken Myra's body. Now, every Draxan alive would learn what it meant to awaken something stronger than fear. The chamber shook with the approach of soldiers. Elias braced himself, Predator at his side, Mira clinging to life on its back. The storm had only begun. The walls shook as the Draxan forces closed in. The air thrummed with the hiss of energy weapons charging, the thud of boots pounding in unison. Elias positioned himself between the advancing soldiers and Mira, his grip tight on the blood-stained alien blade. His chest burned from exhaustion, but his eyes remained fixed, unblinking, on the corridor ahead. The Predator crouched low beside him, its amber eyes blazing, its breath steaming hot in the cold air. Behind its shoulders, Mira clung weakly, half-conscious but determined not to fall. The first wave came without hesitation. Dozens of Draxans stormed through the smoke, their armor glowing with crimson runes, their weapons raised in perfect discipline. They thought their numbers gave them strength. Elias lifted the blade, voice raw but steady. Forward. The Predator obeyed. With a roar that shattered stone, it hurled itself into the heart of the formation. Claws slashed, teeth gnashed, and alien warriors screamed as they were torn apart. Elias followed in its wake, ducking beneath plasma fire, striking with ruthless precision. His blade sliced through necks, his stolen rifle barked bolts of fire, each shot finding the exposed gaps in their armor. He had no room for mercy, no space for hesitation. Every strike brought him closer to the only goal that mattered, getting Mira out alive. The Draxan tried to hold their formation, but the Predator was a storm made flesh. It swept aside soldiers like leaves in a gale, its muscles corded with fury, its eyes locked on the humans it had chosen to protect. Elias moved as its second shadow, weaving between the chaos, carving down survivors who staggered from the Predator's fury. Together, they broke the line and surged into the wider halls of the fortress. Alarms shrieked overhead. The walls blazed red with emergency sigils. Draxan commanders shouted orders, their guttural voices echoing through the corridors. Contain the beast. Do not let them escape. Containment barriers crashed down from the ceiling, massive slabs of steel laced with runes, cutting off paths one after another. Elias cursed under his breath. They were driving him toward the central courtyard, forcing them into a trap. But he had no choice. To turn back was death. To hesitate was to lose Mira. The Predator slowed as they entered the courtyard, a vast chamber beneath the open sky. Black winds howled through shattered arches, carrying the stench of sulfur and fire. Across the plaza, battalions waited, hundreds of Draxan soldiers arrayed in tight lines, their weapons glowing like a sea of stars. Behind them loomed warbeasts chained to pylons, towering creatures bred for battle, their eyes glowing with cruel intelligence. Elias felt Mira stir faintly against his back, her voice little more than a whisper. You can't fight them all. He glanced over his shoulder, his jaw set like iron. Watch me. The Draxan warden second in command stepped forward from the ranks, his armor marked with jagged scars of command. His voice boomed across the courtyard. Human, your defiance ends here. The Predator is ours. The healer is ours. You are nothing but prey. The Predator's growl rumbled like an earthquake, its body coiled and ready to strike. Elias tightened his grip on the blade, teeth bared. Then let's see how prey fights. The battle erupted in a blinding storm of light and sound. Plasma fire rained down in torrents, scorching stone, blasting craters into the courtyard floor. Elias dove behind the Predator's shoulder as the beast barreled forward, absorbing the barrage with its sheer mass. It leapt into the ranks with terrifying ferocity, scattering soldiers like insects. Elias followed, weaving through smoke and debris, his blade cutting, his rifle flashing. The warbeasts strained at their chains, their roars shaking the ground. Draxan handlers loosed them one by one, unleashing hulking monsters with tusks like spears and armor-plated hides. One crashed into the Predator, both titans locked in a storm of claws and teeth. Elias was thrown to the ground by the shockwave of their clash. He scrambled up, firing into the advancing Draxan while the Predator wrestled the beast to the ground, tearing its throat open with a spray of black blood. Another warbeast charged, its tusks slamming into the Predator's flank, driving it back. Elias saw it stagger and his heart clenched, but the Predator rose again, eyes blazing brighter, fueled by fury not pain. It hurled itself back into the fray, biting down on a tusk until it snapped like brittle glass, then driving its claws through the creature's skull. The courtyard ran slick with alien blood. Elias fought like a man possessed, every motion sharp, efficient, relentless. He had trained to save lives, to mend broken flesh, but tonight his skill was sharpened into a weapon. He ducked beneath a Draxan swing, buried his blade in the alien's gut, and ripped upward, sending viscera spilling across the stones. Another tried to flank him, only to be hurled aside by the predator's sweeping tail. They moved as one, soldier and beast, their rhythm unbreakable. Through the chaos, Elias noticed something new, the glimmer of recording drones circling overhead. The Draxan were broadcasting this battle, turning it into a spectacle for the council. He bared his teeth in a grim smile. Let them watch. Let them see what humanity could do when cornered. The predator leapt again, scattering another squad, and Elias shouted over the din, "They'll know. Every empire, every council seat, they'll see you bow to no one." As if in answer, the predator slammed its claws into the courtyard floor and released a roar that seemed to shake the stars themselves. The sound rolled across the prison world, a declaration of war, a promise of vengeance. Soldiers faltered, their weapons trembling in their hands. The sight of the galaxy's deadliest predator standing shoulder to shoulder with a human rattled even their drilled discipline. Elias seized the moment, pointing his blade toward the fortress gates. "Break through." The predator obeyed, hurling itself toward the massive steel doors that barred the exit. Plasma fire lanced its hide, bolts searing fur and flesh, but it did not falter. With one titanic strike, it smashed the gate inward, the doors buckling like paper. Beyond, the black winds howled over barren stone plains stretching into the horizon. Elias clambered onto the predator's back, cradling Mira close. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open just long enough to see the gates collapse. Her lips curved faintly, a whisper brushing his ear. Freedom. But the fight was not finished. The courtyard erupted again as Draxan reinforcements poured from the barracks, hundreds more soldiers surging to cut them off. Elias's heart hammered. They had broken the fortress's gates, but beyond lay open ground, and the entire world would soon descend upon them. The predator turned its head, amber eyes meeting Elias's once more. In that gaze, Elias saw the question, the unspoken choice: stand and fight here until the end, or charge into the unknown beyond the gates. Elias tightened his hold on Mira and gripped the predator's fur with bloodied hands. His voice was hoarse but certain. "We don't die in their cage. Run." The predator roared in answer and surged forward, barreling through the shattered gate into the storm outside. Plasma fire chased them, shouts echoed behind, but the black winds swallowed their trail as they vanished into the night. Inside the fortress, Draxan soldiers regrouped, their commanders shouting frantic orders. The recording drones still hovered, transmitting every moment across the galaxy. On distant worlds, alien rulers and counselors watched in stunned silence as the unthinkable played out. A human and the predator of nightmares, not killing one another but escaping together. The Draxan fortress stood, but its walls no longer commanded fear. The universe had seen something it could never unsee. The storm lashed across the barren plains, black winds clawing at stone and flesh alike. Elias clung tight to the predator's back, his arms around Myra's fragile form as the beast thundered across the desolate ground. Lightning from alien skies illuminated their path in fractured flashes, painting the world in hues of violet and ash. Each strike revealed the devastation behind them. Columns of fire rising from the Draxan fortress, swarms of soldiers spilling into the night, and war machines groaning to life. They had escaped the cage, but the hunt had only just begun. Mira stirred weakly, her voice rasping against Elias's shoulder. "How long can we run?" "As long as it takes," Elias replied, though the weight in his chest betrayed him. His body ached, his breath ragged, but his will remained unbroken. He could not falter, not now. Mira had endured torture, survived unspeakable cruelty. If she still breathed, he would carve the stars apart to keep her alive. The predator carried them with tireless speed, its body heaving with silent endurance. Its amber eyes gleamed in the stormlight, fixed always forward. To Elias, it felt less like a beast and more like a partner. Each stride was a promise, each roar a shield. Where once it might have been humanity's nightmare, now it was his ally, and the galaxy had seen it. That truth burned brighter than any torch. But the Draxan would not let such humiliation stand. The first barrage came without warning. From the cliffs ahead, cannons roared, raining plasma fire across the plains. The predator twisted aside, leaping over molten craters, its muscles coiled like springs. Elias shielded Mira with his body as shards of scorched stone bit into his skin. He lifted his head, spotting Draxan warships emerging through the clouds, their hulls glowing like red eyes in the darkness. "They'll box us in," Elias muttered, more to himself than to her. His gaze flicked to the horizon where the plains ended in jagged cliffs dropping into a black chasm. The choice was simple: turn back and die or gamble everything on the unknown below. He leaned close to the predator's ear, his voice low but resolute. Forward. Don't stop. The beast roared, obeying without hesitation. It barreled toward the cliffs as Draxon fire lit the skies, turning night to flame. Soldiers shouted from the ridges, weapons crackling, but the predator was already airborne, leaping into the void. For a heartbeat, they hung suspended in silence, 3 souls wrapped in defiance. Then the world dropped away and they plunged into darkness. The chasm swallowed them whole, its depths cloaked in mist. The predator landed hard on a ledge, then bounded downward, its claws digging into rock as it carried them lower and lower. Plasma fire rained above, but the Draxon dared not follow into the abyss. Their warships hovered at the edge, casting crimson searchlights into the void, but no beam could pierce the storming depths. For now, Elias and his companions were shadows lost to the dark. They found refuge in a cavern carved by time and silence. The predator lay down at last, its chest heaving, its sides marred by burns and cuts. Elias slid to the ground, his legs trembling, his arms still cradling Mira. He pressed a hand to her pulse, faint but steady. Relief flooded him, but it was tempered by exhaustion. "We can't stay here long," he whispered, more to keep himself awake than for her to hear. "They'll come. They always come." The predator's gaze met his in the dim light, amber eyes steady, unwavering. In that look, Elias found something he had never expected from the galaxy's most feared predator: trust. It was not the blind obedience of a beast, nor the coerced loyalty of a prisoner. It was recognition. A pact sealed not by chains but by blood spilled side by side. Elias rested his head back against the stone, staring into the blackness beyond the cavern's mouth. His mind replayed the sight of the recording drones circling the battlefield, broadcasting every moment of their defiance to the Council. He could almost hear their silence across the stars, the disbelief that prey had stood unbroken, that the predator had chosen humanity over domination. That silence would not last. Whispers would grow. Doubt would spread. The Draxon's supremacy had cracked, and the fracture would widen. When Mira awoke again, it was with trembling hands clutching his sleeve. Her eyes, though glassy with pain, held fire. "Elias, they'll come for you. For both of you. They'll brand you a weapon, or a threat." "Then let them come," Elias answered, his voice carrying the weight of steel. "I've seen what they call power. I've seen what they think control means. But they don't understand us, Mira. They don't understand humanity." He glanced toward the predator, its ears flicking as if listening. "They'll learn soon enough." The moment did not last. The cavern shuddered with a deep, resonant boom, the sound of warships landing above. The Draxon had begun their descent. Their hunt had found him once more. Elias rose, helping Mira to her feet. His body screamed in protest, but his spirit burned brighter. He turned to the predator, placing a hand against its scarred hide. "One last stand. Together." The beast answered with a low growl, more oath than sound. The Draxon descended in waves, armored soldiers spilling into the cavern, their weapons blazing, their war chants echoing like thunder. Elias surged forward with blade in hand, his movements sharp, calculated, fueled by desperation and fury. The predator charged beside him, a storm of claws and teeth, hurling Draxon into walls, tearing through their ranks with primal rage. Together they carved a path of devastation, man and beast bound by something deeper than survival, by choice. Mira, weakened yet unbroken, dragged herself behind a fallen column, seizing a discarded rifle. Her hands trembled, but her aim was true. Each shot she fired cut down the soldiers who dared flank Elias, her courage burning through her pain. She was no longer merely a victim. She was part of this fight, as vital as the predator's roar or Elias's blade. The battle stretched, brutal and unrelenting. Draxon bodies piled, but still they came, pouring into the cavern like an endless tide. Elias's arms grew heavy, his breath ragged, blood dripping from a dozen cuts. The predator staggered, its fur singed, its claws slick with gore, yet it fought on, relentless as the storm itself. They could not hold forever. Then above the chaos, a new sound pierced the cavern, the hum of foreign engines, sharper, cleaner, not Draxon. Lights flooded the chamber, blinding both sides. A voice rang out through amplifiers, crisp and commanding. "Stand down. By order of the Galactic Council, this battle is ended." The Draxon froze, weapons still raised but their discipline wavering. Into the cavern marched figures clad in silver and white, their insignias gleaming, the enforcers of the council, arbiters of order across the stars. Their leader stepped forward, eyes fixed not on the Draxon, but on Elias and the Predator. Across the galaxy the council had seen enough. The image of a human standing shoulder to shoulder with the universe's deadliest predator had already spread like wildfire. To destroy them now would be to erase a truth too dangerous to bury. To acknowledge them was to rewrite the balance of power forever. Elias stood bloodied, trembling yet unbowed. His hand rested on the predator's hide, steady, unshaken. The cavern held its breath, every soldier waiting for the council's judgment. The enforcer's voice carried, sharp as a blade. The Draxon have broken the codes of war. Their cruelty has birthed this, an alliance none could imagine. The council will not silence it. The galaxy will remember. Mira closed her eyes, tears tracing down her cheeks. Elias exhaled, a sound that was half relief, half defiance. The predator growled low, not in threat but in warning, its eyes burning with untamed fire. For the first time Elias believed they had won, not just freedom but something greater. A fracture had opened in the foundations of the galaxy, and through it humanity had stepped, hand in claw with the impossible. The storm raged on outside but within a new truth had taken root. Humanity was no longer prey. And the predator, once nightmare and legend, now slept in a human shadow, not as a prisoner, not as a pet, but as an equal. The universe would never be the same.